Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening, Fade to Black. Today is Wednesday, July 12th, 2023. Tonight's one of those shows you are going to remember. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Let's do this, man. And I want to thank everybody for helping support the show. All of the hard work that we do here, we broadcast live each night, Monday through Thursday. With Fade to Black, we do the news every day, Monday through Thursday. And you can help support myself and the team and all of the hard work we do here with Fade to Black t-shirts. That free shipping, free next day shipping, and you can get your t-shirts two ways. You can get one from the website, the links are below, or you can get a Game Changer membership. Everything is autographed, everything is free shipping, and there you go. The links are below. Thank you so much. Tonight, Angela T. Smith is with us. We're going to be discussing remote viewing tonight, which is going to stretch into a bunch of other subjects, which includes her work with Bigelow. We'll probably talk some ET tonight, contact disclosure, and everything around remote viewing. One of the subjects that I'm interested in everything that we broadcast and with every guest. That's why we do that. But remote viewing, for me, it's just one of those things. Now, her qualifications were in nursing and social work in the UK. She lives here in the United States now. And she also worked with the Psychophysical Research Laboratories, PEAR, until being hired by the Princeton PRL, until being hired by the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research PEAR laboratory. 5 fascinating years at PEAR preceded a move to Las Vegas, where she worked as Mr. Robert Bigelow's research coordinator. We will get into all of that. While studying for her Ph.D., she also trained with Paul Smith, a guest on this show a couple of times, great guy, and Lynn Buchanan, 2 of the ex-Stargate military remote viewers. She teaches, she trains remote viewing. She consults here in the United States and overseas. And she's also a shamanic practitioner, and we'll get into some of that too as well. Her links are below. I would like to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, Angela T. Smith. Now, the T is there, Angela, because there's so many Angela Smiths out there, you know, and you've got to separate yourself from all of the impersonators. I get that. But welcome to the show. It's about time. How you doing?
Thank you.
The question was, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well, thank you. Yes. Enjoying life.
Let's get the first-time guest disclaimer out of the way, Angela. The next time you're on the show, you're not going to get it, but you get it tonight. But you're a remote viewer, and you already knew that. But here it is. It's just you and I, Angela, sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where that conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends. But we're going to end as friends. There you go. You ready? Agreed? Accept?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good. Angela, I was looking at the chat before the show. Now, we've got a lot of things to discuss tonight, but one of the things that is in the chat already, so many are interested in this. Can anybody remote view?
I believe the majority of people can remote view. because this is a natural, normal ability that everybody has. Most people are intuitive to some extent, and what remote viewing does is it trains you to listen to your subconscious and to be able to access information from a distance using something other than the known five senses, which is the simplest explanation for it.
I think that a lot of people feel that they are intuitive. I mean, you have deja vu, and precog and things that happen throughout life. So and then dreams that come true, right? Things like that. Is that an indication of what you're talking about?
It's a variation of a basic skill, and I think it occurs on it's not either you are intuitive or you're not intuitive. It occurs on, I believe, a continuum from people at one end who say, well, I don't have a psychic bone in my body, and they're very left brain thinking folks. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that's the way they are. Up to the far end, the other end of the spectrum of people who have been, who are very intuitive. They have perhaps have had out-of-body experiences, a lot of other types of intuitive abilities, and maybe have done some training with remote viewing. And they're like the musical equivalent of somebody who goes and plays at Carnegie Hall rather than can play a simple tune. So the people at the far end are experienced and practiced in remote viewing.
Now, what about you? Did you at an early age were you like reading your mom's mind? You know what I mean? Did you have the
Sometimes, except my mother told me it was all imagination. I had out-of-body experiences from a very young age where I would just go off before I went to sleep. I knew I wasn't asleep. And I would wander around the neighborhood with my mind, sit up on the roof, go visit my grandmother's house. And then I'd come back and I'd go, okay, I'm tired now. I'm going to go to sleep. And I told my mother, and she said, no, that's just imagination. You imagined that. So I decided to test it when I was a little older. And when I went to somebody's house, I would look at specific things, like the headmistress of my school. She had a lot of crystal vases. And one day I told her what I'd seen. And she said, how do you know that? She said, yes, I do. And I had to tell her, oh, I think I dreamed it, because I had no words to explain what I was doing.
That scares the crap out of me. That's a pretty good ability. And now her reaction was a natural one, right? How is it possible? You've never been to my house, and your reaction was probably pretty natural too. But I was just dreaming. But for you, was this confirmation? Was this all that you needed, that you did have a gift?
I didn't think of it as a gift. I thought it was like everybody dreams, or most people dream. Not everybody remembers their dreams. And I thought, well, this must be something like dreaming. It's not dreaming because I'm awake, but it's like dreaming. And people don't talk about it very much. Like, not everybody talks about their dreams. So I classified it as a normal ability that everybody had. So I didn't think of myself as very unusual as a child for doing this.
When you have something like this going on, did you decide to pursue, how do I want to say this, training or others out there did you even know what remote viewing was at that point?
Not at that point. I realized that other people had these experiences and that they were something unusual when I was doing my master's degree at Manchester University in England, and I joined an evening class where we sat around and talked about our unusual experiences. And people were talking about how they'd gone out of body during an accident, or they'd taken a drug. And there was one other young man who'd had multiple out of body experiences. I didn't even know what they were called until that evening. And so I talked to the group. We met up at the pub later, which is a very British thing to do, and decided we'd do a little bit of research. And as I said, we didn't call it remote viewing at that point because, we hadn't. This was in the 80s, and I didn't know until a couple of months, even a year later, about remote viewing. So when my friends from the class would go off on vacation, I'd say, would you mind if I just take a look at where you are while you're on vacation? And then when you come back, I can tell you what I saw. And you can tell me if I was right or wrong. And there was enough, everything wasn't completely correct, of course, but there was enough information that I realized as a scientist, because I was doing my master's then, that there really is something to this. And then I found the original IEEE paper by Puthoff and Targ, who did the research with remote viewing at Stanford. And it was at that point, it was like, wow, this is real. People can really do this stuff.
I sat with well, I've done this a few times, but I was talking with Jacques Vallée a few months ago privately. We were in a hotel, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were doing some work, and we got to we just went and sat in the hotel lobby for like 4 or 5 hours, right? Just the two of us, and talked. And the subject of SRI and remote viewing came up. And he looked at me. I'm not going to imitate him, but he's got the most fabulous accent, like ever. And he goes, I got pretty good at it. Right. And he said, I went in pretty skeptical. I was looking at the research, but I decided to give it a shot. And I realized, A, that it was real, and B, I think that we all can do this because I got pretty good at it. And that's coming from Jacques Vallée, somebody that is very pragmatic.
Yes,
he's very
yes.
straightforward. But that says a lot. Did you mentioned Targ, and did you reach out to other members of SRI?
I didn't at that time because I was still living in England, and it wasn't until I came over to the States that I started reaching out and doing further research and building up my own knowledge of what remote viewing was. And I learned that the term didn't originate at SRI. It originated with Ingo Swann and Dr. Janet Mitchell in New York, with at the American Society for Psychophysical Research, where Janet and Dr. Osis were researching Ingo's out-of-body experiences. And together they came up with the term remote viewing. And then when he contacted SRI, they said, oh, come on out and let's test you. So he took the term with him, and it was then adopted by SRI. And with a view to being a scientific term. So they said what we used to call, in one of their papers they wrote, what we used to call out-of-body experience, exteriorization, et cetera, we are now calling remote viewing as a neutral term. So that was the history.
Well, and of course, with the CIA and the military aspects to this, where anything like this, you're going to have people that are going to, okay, we can use this for other stuff, which ultimately did start to happen. And Russia was involved with this too. But my question to you is, have any agencies or law enforcement approached you about remote viewing and applications to use it?
Yes, and most of them I can't talk about. They were mostly events or people, and I've never had any security clearances. So even though, I'll give you an example. After 9/11, I was contacted by an email from somebody who just called himself Navy Frank and wanted to send me some projects, and which I think there were 3 of them in total, and went ahead, did the projects, scanned them, sent them off, emailed them back, and I got emails back saying, thank you, that was very helpful. And that was it. I never got any feedback. I deduced that they were related to 9/11, but I didn't know because I didn't get feedback. So that's basically what I've been able to do if I've been contacted by military or government or other groups. Then I can do some projects for them blind, which means I have no upfront knowledge of what the target is, just what's called a coordinate, which is like a alphanumeric. I think of it as GPS for the subconscious. So you get this alphanumeric, that's all you know. It's like the address of the target, ABC 1, 2, 3. And you just go ahead and do the session, send the information off, and hope you're right.
Okay, so you blind, right? No front loading, no information whatsoever.
At that time, yes.
And what do you mean at that time?
Because I got to the point where I could have some minimal front loading. The target is a location, describe the location. So they weren't totally blind, the later ones.
Can you give me an example of that?
I was contacted by a lady who was investigating the border down below Arizona and Texas, and wanted to know, about the people coming across the border at that particular time. I didn't know too much at that time about at that particular event. They said the instructions were describe the location, describe the individuals, describe the outcome. So I went in and I saw that there was a big fire pit and there were people coming, and I sent all that off, and then got a little bit of feedback that this was from the one of the agencies that wanted to know about the folks that were currently going across the border at that time. This was about 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. The other perception, man, that's fascinating, by the way. The other perception, and I've talked to Paul Smith about this. I've talked to Russell Targ about this, and other remote viewers. Is there? I think that some of us, there's a romantic side to remote viewing. Not romantic.
No, I understand.
But there's a romantic side to it where there is a perception that you could be in somebody's office and look at the paperwork on their desk and have a total recall of what is happening. Like you could look into my studio here and tell me what's on what's in front of me. Is it like that? Is it that cool? That's the romantic kind of
No, it's not that precise. I'm trying, it's different for different remote viewers. For me, I could go into an office and I could get the gist of what was written about. not the actual words, because when you're remote viewing, you're using your non-verbal hemisphere of your brain to access the information, and then the left brain to kind of analyze it to get it down onto paper and into words. So for me, it's the gist of the document or the article rather than the actual words, word for word.
Wouldn't that be something that the CIA, the military, the Pentagon, right, to be able to go into the war room of some foreign adversary and be able to look at the maps on their walls, right, and their
Well, I know
ideas?
that was done. For example, Pat Price, who was, of course, one of the major viewers at Stanford at SRI, when somebody went in to talk to him one time, saw that he had a big map on the wall with push pins, and he said, "Well, what's that about?" He said, "Oh, I'm just following different submarines, and then going into the submarines." And Pat Price also went into a location where he was able to view file folders in a classified installation, and was able to read out code names and remember code names from where he'd seen in the file cabinets, and bring them back to the to the session.
Yeah, we know about Ingo Swann, and Russell and others, but Pat Price was kind of a rock star of remote viewing, wasn't he?
He was, yes, he was pretty good. I never knew him, of course. I came along a long time
Yeah.
after that. But from what I understand, and then his death was very enigmatic. You've probably read about that.
I didn't want to go there.
No, perhaps
But,
not.
but Pat was too visible. You know what I mean? I think his ego. Now I never met him. He passed
No,
away.
I don't know.
You know what I mean? But I just think that he he was an enigma. We'll just leave it at that. But
Yeah.
the remote viewers that knew him said that he was really, really good.
That's what I understand. Yeah, and some of the examples that Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff bring up of the work that he did with them was very, very. I mean, his sketches of the Russian locations was just amazing when they finally compared them to the pictures of the actual locations.
Right. Oh, see, yeah, it's happening. Okay, turn me down. Turn your speakers down.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we had this issue, everybody, a sound check. We were hoping we could get away with it, but
Okay. How is that?
we'll find out, won't we?
Okay.
I can whisper.
Yeah.
At a quantum level, in a physics level, at a quantum level, what do you think is going on? Is it some form of entanglement? Is it a connection in the electric universe? Is it something to do with consciousness, where this connection, right? Your eyeballs, your brain is able to bilocate, right? Is able to go somewhere else. But scientifically, there's got to be something going on. In your research, in your PhD, what I know you've thought about this. What do you think is allowing this to happen?
To be honest, I have no idea. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a mathematician. I know at PEAR, where I worked for 5 years, they had a concept that this was a quantum entanglement process, that we were all connected at some quantum level, and I like that idea. But I also like the idea that I'm an individual and I have my own process. But knowing that a good remote viewer can go basically anywhere and get some information about the target.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be on planet.
Say that again.
It doesn't have to be on planet, on Earth. You can go to
Oh,
Mars.
absolutely not. No, you can. It can be off planet. In fact, Ingo Swann did the first off planet remote viewings of Jupiter, where he saw the rings of Jupiter that were only found later on, but when a probe went out to visit Jupiter and found the rings around Jupiter. And also the moon. He'd also gone to the moon for a client, and there was information that came back that confirmed what he'd seen. So, and I also followed in his footsteps, and I went and looked at Jupiter too, because this was a long time after he had done it. I wanted to see for myself, and saw water liquid that looked like water, like a lake. And then also there were sort of crystal mountain areas, and I've written about this. And it wasn't until I suppose about 10 years ago, a probe went out and they actually found that there were large lakes there on Jupiter, but they're chemicals. They're chemicals, and that they called them lakes. So that's what I saw when I went out and looked.
Have you thought about ET?
Of course.
And
course.
I mean, if I was a remote viewer, I would want it blind, right? Somebody's got an envelope, they got the code letters on the outside, and there's something in that envelope. I don't know what it is, and so forth. But man, the contacting or remote viewing a civilized planet outside of our star system, I think would be the ultimate use of remote viewing, because
absolutely.
right.
I was very fortunate that in between 2003 and 2012, I worked for a very innovative businessman, a New York businessman. And as well as doing consulting for him on his businesses, he also had a lot of very personal interests. And one of them was ETs and UFOs. And he said one year that we were working together, can you remote view ETs? And I said, well, I'd have to find a protocol, some kind of protocol, so I wouldn't be too front loaded or too, it would be more objective rather than me going, oh, let me just take a look and see what I can see. And we put together a very strict protocol of questions that were taken from questionnaires that were given to indigenous people out in, perhaps in the Amazon. And over a period of a year, we interviewed 20 different races. Now, we wrote those up, and eventually they formed. I wrote with C.B. Scott Jones, a colleague, a book called Voices from the Cosmos, and the interviews formed the central part of that. So they have been published, and my client said to me, well, how do you know you're not picking up? Because I tried to do it very, very scientifically and very objectively. How do you know you're not picking up some young man in his mother's basement that's sending out all this information? And I said, because each of the races that we've accessed so far have been so unique and so different. So that for me was interesting.
And what did you find out?
That each of the races was very different. We started off with the Greys, went through the Nordics, even the reptilians who didn't want to talk to me, but I'm very stubborn, so I persisted. And I have an Excel file that has listed all the the different races and all the different factors that we found. And I'm willing to share that. If anybody wants to contact me, I can share it by email. It's free, shareable, and I'm very happy to share it with anybody who wants to get in touch with me.
Well, can it go both ways? Or it should, in that ET must be able to remote view,
Well,
right?
I'm sure there have been people who've talked about having contact, spontaneous contact, and I haven't had that. I've had an interest in ETs, UFOs from being a child in England, but hadn't really thought about doing contact as such until, oh gosh, decades and decades later.
When somebody is, this is a little bit outside of the box, but when somebody is channeling, like Bashar, for instance, and Darylenka, who's really good, is that the same? I wouldn't classify it as remote viewing, but
No.
certainly there is some type of entanglement going on where these minds are connected, right? And it's not the same, but it is.
Well, there's a big difference, I think, in anybody who's channeling or is a medium. They give over their body and mind to the entity or energy that they're getting information from. With remote viewing, you don't do that. All you are is an observer, and you observe the information and you report the information. You can interact by talking to somebody at the target site and get a bit more information, which is a more advanced level. But you don't give over your body or mind as you do in channeling or mediumship to other entities or other energies. So there is a difference.
Wait a minute. What do you mean conversation? And here's the other thing. Have you been in a session and maybe have been seen, right? You know what I mean? Or felt? Have you seen somebody like spin around and go?
No, I haven't experienced that. But in controlled remote viewing, which was the process developed by Hal Puthoff and Ingo Swann to be a more formalized way to remote viewing, a series of steps and stages. When you get to stage 4, there is the possibility there that you can say, okay, I need more information about this target location. I'm going to find somebody at the target location. So in your mind, you search for somebody, and it's subconscious to subconscious, the person at the other side, and you have to be very ethical about this, and say, can you tell me more about this location? And sometimes they'll say no, or they'll swear at you. So you say, okay, I'll find somebody else.
Well, man, I feel like I'm being watched. Right? You know what I mean? You know that feeling that you get.
Remote viewers have reported that, yes.
Yes. It must be that way. What about I want to get back to PEAR and other things, but what about like Bigfoot? You know what I mean? And some of the things that may seem fringe to the rest of the world, but we've had sightings, we've got no bodies. And it's the same thing with ET, and it's the same thing with ghosts. Have you thought about that? And have remote viewers attempted to remote view Bigfoot?
Not that I know of. I think that's been a more on the ground looking for physical traces and sounds. I've never been asked to remote view Bigfoot. Some viewers might have, I don't know, because we don't all communicate. There's so many of us out there now. We don't always keep track of who looks at what. As for ghosts, I've had experience of that physically myself because I grew up in a haunted house. We had footsteps that would come up the stairs and things moving around in the bedrooms, wardrobe doors slamming shut. So I've always felt there was a reality to that, but I've never really had to remote view that. But again, there are groups that do remote view ghosts and ghoulies and perhaps even Bigfoot.
Who's better, you or Paul Smith?
Oh gosh, I don't compare.
I'm just
I
kidding.
know what I can do. He knows what he can do, and we've been on very different paths. Yeah,
he is such a nice.
that's
He's
not
such
fair.
a nice. Yeah, I know. He's such a nice guy. He's so smart. I've had a lot of fun with him. But he also, I think, intimidating might be the right word. He is really good. And there is something about Paul and other remote viewers at that level that kind of makes me a little bit nervous, right? Where they have the ability to do this stuff. And Paul is one of them, isn't he?
Yeah, I've seen him do practice sessions. I don't do it now, but I used to go and assist him in his classes. And one of the things he did when they were about halfway through the class was he would ask them to choose a target, give it a coordinate or address of the target, and then give just him the address, and he would sit and do a session in front of them live. And then at the end would write up a little quick summary, and then they would provide him with the feedback. He has done some amazing work doing that. I mean, just amazing. And I wouldn't want to be put on the spot like that. I will do remote viewing, but I prefer to go to get the blind target, go away, sit down by myself, do a session, send it off, and then if they want more information, come back and say we need information about this, this, and this, and give them more. But I have done a couple in front of folks, but I'm a little on the shy side, reserved side, so I prefer not to do that.
Paul will do it in a second.
Of course, yes, he does. Yes.
He's such a cool dude. But you look in his eyes, and you can tell there's a sparkle there. He's an immensely talented guy. Now, and the reason why I'm asking stuff like this is because we have some strange things. You brought up Jupiter, but we've got Mars, right? We have Perseverance right now, and we've got a helicopter flying on Mars right now, right? That's and we are looking for things. It seems strange to me that we don't have Perseverance, or we haven't been to Cydonia, and we haven't checked out some of the things that seem pretty strange on the surface of Mars. Shouldn't we apply remote viewing to Mars and maybe Europa and the dark side of the moon?
Yes, in fact, the very last project of the year-long project I was doing with a business client was Mars, and a race that lives underground on Mars we discovered. And we only got so far. We had more work to do with them when the client came under he was getting surveilled is one thing, one way to describe it. and it spooked him, and it made him very nervous. So we stopped at that point. But we got a lot of information, and the RAL are included in the information that I have that Excel file that I'm sharing, so they are on there. And also, I've given Mars to students that I've been teaching. Sometimes I teach a weekend course, and I'll give them a blind target at the end to work with 3 different sessions, and they come up with a race that's living underground, that's very intelligent and very advanced, and so there's definitely life there.
Right now, or was this in the distant past?
This is right now. This is current stuff.
Oh, what do you make of Elon wants to go to Mars? He's going to go to Mars. He's definitely going to build a city on Mars. It's going to be called New Musk, right? He's going to do that. He's going to do it. But that's a private corporation. What if they encounter this race, and how will that culture react to humans being on Mars? Are they just like us? Are they going to be accepting of that, or is somebody in for a pretty big surprise?
I can only tell you what we found in my client and I, that when I first started doing the project, trying to access, this group, they said that they had encountered the early probes and wondered what they were and thought they were gifts for them. So some of them have disappeared, some of these early probes. And it wasn't till later on that they realized that these were coming. They probably saw some landing. I don't know. This is just guesswork here. Saw some of them landing and said, okay, these are not for us. They are from some other race. So I think they are aware of us. They are aware of humans, particularly now with the little helicopter and the fact that we've been sending probes there for decades.
Well, we've got stuff orbiting Mars right now. So does China. But they're living underground. They're not above ground. They're living.
No, they're underground. They do go to the surface, according to the viewers, but they're mostly an underground race. There's lots of water underground, and places to have to live.
Did they live above ground at some point? And were they the builders of like Sidonia and that area?
I've never remote viewed that, so I don't know. I've only, because I don't spend my life remote viewing. It's like a surgeon. A surgeon doesn't spend every waking moment cutting into people. There's certain locations. Let me click here and come back. I just went dark for a moment. My screen went off. I remote view when I'm tasked to remote view, or I choose to remote view. It's not something I do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I do pick up intuitive stuff from time to time, but it's more of a career, a job that I do.
One last thing about Mars. What did they physically look like?
I never actually perceived them physically. If this was information, because the project that I did was more like an interview process. I sat at my computer with the questions written into the computer, and I would ask questions and perceive responses. I was more of a reporter rather than looking. We did a couple of site visits for some of the ET groups, and those are written up in the book, in Voices from the Cosmos. But I don't know. I imagine the people I do know a couple of remote viewers that have remote viewed the RAL, they call themselves RALL, and they might be better suited to give, a description of them.
Well, I've always wondered, are we Martians? Right? It did, or vice versa. Right?
I've
Our
heard
planets.
that theory. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I've often thought about that, and there's so much in history about this subject, and of course Zachariah Sitchin and others have spoken about this, but it seems our planets are too similar and too close, and Mars being a dead planet now, well, on the surface, a dead planet now, that they saw this coming and came to Earth, right? I don't have any issues with that, and also it could have been in both. It could have been bi-directional for a very long time.
That's a possibility. And the fact that there are so many reports of credible reports of people encountering Earth-based ET groups, and particularly here in Boulder City, there have been, events that have happened. I could tell you one of them if you're interested.
In Boulder City, Nevada? Yeah.
Yes.
What happened?
It used to be that a friend of mine and I used to go for coffee after going to the pool in the morning, and we would always look for weird people. There just seemed to be weird people that came into this particular restaurant. And one day, this couple came in, and if it was just me, I would have thought, well, maybe I'm imagining this, but the both of us perceived the same thing. The woman was very short. She looked very amphibian of appearance, very slight, and she talked to us, asked us, what was good for breakfast, and the guy that was with her was only about 4 foot tall, extremely thin. He had a hat on, a scarf, sunglasses, a coat, gloves, shoes, long coat, and he didn't speak at all. He had very gray complexion, couldn't really see too much of him because he was so dressed up. And they sat at the table next to us together near the wall. And so the woman asked us different questions, but she always looked at him first. He didn't say anything. And then she would ask us the question. And after we left before them, and as we were walking out, my friend said, and excuse my language here, she said, "What the hell was that?" I said, "They're just visitors. They're probably just visitors."
That is the craziest thing I've ever heard. It reminds me of, you remember in the movie E.T. when Drew Barrymore dresses up E.T.,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I'm kind of picturing that, like completely out of place and in disguise.
Well, this guy was very, I think they were visitors, excuse me, and just getting to know humans, that some humans are okay to approach, such as myself and my friend Claire, who was very intuitive too. So, and we discussed it afterwards because it was such a strange encounter.
Now, before we hit the break here, when we come back, we'll talk about Robert Bigelow and some other stuff and what is going on now. But before we get there, what are a couple, if we all have the ability to remote view, what can you tell our audience? What are a couple of things that that they could do and practice and maybe get a start in this? What could you tell them?
First of all, acknowledge your own intuitive ability. Go get some training. There are lots of training groups out there. There are books you can learn it from. Practice, 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 and then be ethical. If you're going out to do remote viewing, don't say, "Oh, okay, I'm going to remote view my neighbor because they've been throwing things over the fence." Keep it ethical, keep it useful, because it's a very useful, very pragmatic skill.
But okay, I understand getting a book on remote viewing and going out, but are there a couple of simple things that one could do or try or practice to see if this is something that they want to pursue?
Well, do it the same as I did in the beginning, which was if you have friends, relatives, colleagues who are going off on vacation somewhere to a location that you've never been to, ask them, would you mind if while you're away, I remote view where you are and make some notes and some sketches. And when you come back, then, take some pictures while you're there, a little bit like what's called an outbounder exercise. And when they come back, then you share and compare the pictures that they've taken with the sketches and descriptions that you've made. So that's the simplest way, I think, to do it.
It's fascinating to me. Now, your work at PEAR, it dealt both with machines, but you were also doing some precog research too as well. Can you walk me through that and what it was like?
Right. I was there for 5 years. I've been working at another Sci lab before that closed down, and they recommended I go over to PEAR, and I volunteered for about 6 months, and then they actually made a job for me, which was very unusual. And they did human-computer interaction research, which was PK research, trying to affect the output of a random number generator and many other devices that they were working with. And then also precognitive remote perception. So, for example, somebody would be going on vacation, and so when they were on vacation, they would, go to a particular spot or, an event. But prior to the outbounder person, the person who was gone on vacation, before a week before, a day before, a week before, even a month before, the person at the lab would remote view or do remote perception of where they were at a certain time, even before the person who was on vacation had decided where they were going to go. So this was precognitive remote perception. And it was found to be very effective. It didn't matter the amount of time or the distance. And of course, there were variations. But overall, when they did the statistics, they found that process was very effective.
How and so the process would be you're going to log this information, right? You're going to have, okay, this is the precog is happening on this day, and you write it out and it's logged, right? And so
Right.
and now the person that is being cogged, they don't know.
Well, yes, they know. They know that they're going to a certain location at a certain time that they choose. There were certain protocols, but this was one of them. This was the more spontaneous one. The person who was out in the future going to a particular location, say they were on vacation, and they decided, okay, we're in Paris, let's go to the
Lavally.
Arc de Triomphe or somewhere. But they tried not to go to postcard places. So they would go perhaps to the Route de Faubourg and look at a particular pension there, with a little boarding house. And then they would go there, they would look around, they would take pictures, they would write a description. There was a grading scale, are there animals present? Is there water present? Is there, et cetera, et cetera. All the information from both the percipient, the person who was doing the viewing, and the agent who was out at that location all got sent to PEAR to a third party who put all that information in the computer and compared the information.
How accurate?
It varied. For example, I took part in one with a gentleman who is now part of IRVA. So he was going off to the Middle East. I was back at Princeton, and I tried to remote view him 5 different times, 5 different unknown locations. And the same time at his location, he tried to remote view me at 4 different particular locations and times. And what was interesting was we both got the 4 correct, the first 4 correct, of him and me and him. The last one, the 5th one, we just didn't get it for some reason. He jumped further ahead to a conference that was taking place, which was a little bit more interesting perhaps than just the bread and butter remote viewing we were doing. So that was interesting, but we got 4 out of 5. We each got 4 out of 5.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Let's take our break right here. Angela T. Smith is our guest. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be back right after this short break. Stay with us. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Please visit all of our sponsors. We're taking a quick break here. All of the links are below. We'll be right back. Join us November 10th, 11th, and 12th, 2023 as Disclosure Fest Foundation and Fade to Black Radio presents Stairway to the Stars, a Human Origins Science and Technology Expo, live at the Luxor Hotel and Casino on the Las Vegas Strip. With live talks, lectures, and workshops by world-acclaimed researchers and authors. This is Jimmy Church, by the way, and I'll be your host all weekend long, featuring topics like human origins, ancient technologies, indigenous teachings, workshops, a mass meditation, yoga and sound healing, music, and so much more. Don't miss our intimate sky watch and meteor shower over the infamous Area 51 airspace in Rachel, Nevada, with special surprise celebrity hosts guiding us through the night. Also introducing our Disclosure Fest VR Starship area with dozens of rides. You've got to check it out. This event will sell out. For more information and tickets, please visit disclosurefest.org. Hi, everybody. Jimmy Church here. Very special announcement, and that is we are shipping Fade to Black t-shirts again. It's been almost 2 years. We did a full upgrade to the website, so you can head over to jimmychurchradio.com. It's all simple to do, and it's right there. Remember, we broadcast 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday. We bring you the best, the brightest, the most knowledgeable and amazing guests, the best conversations. We do that 4 nights a week. We also do 4 days a week. We broadcast the news, and we do that live too as well. It's not a one-man show. I do it with website support. I do it with producers. I do it with writers and artists. All contribute to the show. The best way to help support what we do here is with the Fade to Black t-shirt. And you can get your Fade to Black t-shirt one of 2 ways. First, Go to jimmychurchradio.com, order a shirt. It's really that simple. You're going to get a tracking number, it's going to get shipped, and it's going to get autographed. The second way to get a shirt is with a Game Changer membership. Now, the Game Changer membership not only includes a free t-shirt, but you get a private email to me. You get unlimited commercial-free downloads. You have full access to the website, and everything includes free shipping, and everything is autographed. So help support the show. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. The links are below. You can just go to jimmychurchradio.com, and it's right on the website. So there you go. I'm Jimmy Church, Fade to Black. I'm so excited that I just have one thing to say. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hey everybody, it's Billy Carson, also known as Forbidden Knowledge. I want to talk to you about a very special event coming up July 30th, 2023, the Forbidden Conscious Awards. We're going to honor people who have been contributing to the conscious community for decades. People that you know and love that have helped you get to higher levels of thought and consciousness and awareness. It's going to be a live in-person event, but seats are going to sell out very fast. You want to make sure you're there in person, and guess what? You can help vote for the winners. Voting is available on forbiddenknowledge.com. And the categories are going to be social media influencer, podcast/radio host, TV host, actor, director, producer, entrepreneurs, health and wellness, philanthropists, authors, field researchers, archaeologists, space anomaly hunters, and of course, a Lifetime Achievement Award. I'll be your keynote speaker that night at the Forbidden Conscious Awards. We have celebrity guests performing. We'll have a halftime show where we're actually going to perform music for you. And don't forget about the pre-event mixer, where if you buy a box seat, you'll be in the VIP section, and you also have private access to a VIP mixer with celebrity guests. Shake hands, break bread, network, and then walk the red carpet with us and take amazing photos. It's going to be a night to remember. You don't want to forget this. Make sure you hurry up and get your tickets because they're selling out very fast. I want to see you there. Forbidden Conscious Awards 2023.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, our guest is Angela T. Smith. We're discussing remote viewing and some other stuff, too, as well. But, Angela, how did the Robert Bigelow connection happen?
I had been working for 5 years at PEAR in Princeton, and my job was phased out. And I was told, you need to find another job now. Well, after 5 years at PEAR, how can you match that? So I was putting out resumes to other parapsychologists and research groups. And I was also doing my PhD with Saybrook University. And one of the researchers there, one of the professors, Stanley Krippner, had heard about Robert Bigelow wanting to hire somebody, so he recommended me. And I came out to Las Vegas and met with Robert Bigelow, and it was I found him to be a very enigmatic person, very full of ideas, full of creativity, and I thought, well, this could be something interesting. So I packed up all my books and things from Princeton and shifted out to Las Vegas, not even realizing what it was going to be like. I thought it was going to be mostly desert. And when I got there and I found greenery and a community and interesting people, that was, and of course, working with Robert Bigelow was just totally different.
What was your job title? Oh, no. You can answer that in a second. What were you being interviewed for?
Robert Bigelow wanted somebody to assist him in searching out projects, information, following up on cases, general research, general interviewing people, and we came up with the title of research coordinator because that kind of fit. But he was basically looking for a go-to person that could take on a whole variety of different projects and skills, and looking for things.
Give me a sense of what this conversation must have been like. And I have to ask the obvious. Was there any mention of ET?
Of course. Yeah, that was one of his main interests. And what he wanted to do in the very beginning was he wanted to set up a lab at UNLV similar to the PEAR lab, and have and I would be the liaison between them, but that was dead in the water. It didn't happen. So I realized that he was very, very interested in UFOs, ETs, etc. And our very first project was we went up to Caliente and stayed overnight in a hotel there, separate rooms. And we looked for individuals who would talk to us about all the anomalous stuff that was going on in that area, sightings, events, all sorts of unusual stuff. So people didn't really want to talk to us at first because they thought we were government. They thought we were, looking to exploit them. But we managed to, go with find one person who would give us some information. And then they referred us to somebody else, and they referred us to somebody else. And there was a lot going on. There were, of course, the triangles out of Area 51, which at that time, nobody knew what they were. The locals thought they were UFOs. But the fact that they were being escorted by helicopters was very, very unusual for them. They were very, very cautious about sharing information with us because a lot of the folks out there worked at Area 51 and S4 and all the other areas around there. So that was our very first project, and that convinced me, this was a very strong interest of Mr. Bigelow's.
Were the black triangles is an interesting description. What did you think was going on? Were the black triangles ET, or were they our own craft that we were testing at Area 51?
We weren't making any judgments at that time. It was just collecting data, collecting information, stories, trying to make some sense of the information that was coming out of that little town. So I think Mr. Bigelow really felt that it was ET related, or some of it was ET related.
And what about, did he own Skinwalker at that time?
No, that happened after I left.
That happened after you left. Did he ever bring up Skinwalker or that other interdimensional aspect of interest in research?
Yeah, because there were other ranches, some up in Pioche and in those areas that had very, very similar events happening. So we were aware, even before he purchased Skinwalker Ranch, that there were other areas and other ranches that had very similar things happening, sightings and events and skinwalkers, etc.
And as research coordinator, where was your interest? You're going out and looking for subjects. What were you looking for personally?
Well, the going out into the community was rare. most of my work took part in an office that was in his big house on Southeastern Avenue. I had a little office tucked away in the back on the ground floor. And so I have written up a review of what I did over those years. For example, we did, we started off a radio program shortly after I arrived with, there was Linda Moulton Howe and George Knapp and, our famous friend. So we called it Area 2000, and that lasted for 6 months. And our first guest was Dr. John Alexander. And so we had, my role was to get on the computer and to find interesting people, interesting cases, interesting newsworthy stuff for Linda Moulton Howe and George Knapp to put out on the show. And that lasted for 6 months. We had every other, I think it was on a Monday, don't remember exactly now. And eventually, I don't know what happened. Mr. Bigelow changed his mind and said, we're not going to do this anymore. And Art Bell then went off on his own into, coast to coast.
This is the first I've ever heard of this. Okay, so you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, that Bigelow started a radio show with George Knapp, Linda Moulton Howe, and Art Bell?
Art Bell's studio, which was at the time was down on in downtown Las Vegas, and called Area 2000. And basically Art Bell was the interviewer. He was already doing a show, but he wanted to do this for Mr. Bigelow. And so we had Linda Moulton Howe reporting on animal mutilations, etc. And George Knapp was into, and you can confirm that with George. And as I said, with the first one we did was July 4th of 1993. And I remember it because I went with my then gentleman friend and his kids to the Silver Bowl for the July 4th fireworks. And I took a little radio with me with headphones to listen to the show, because we set it all up beforehand and then just let Art go with it. So, and it lasted for 6 months until I never found out why Mr. Bigelow decided to stop the show. But we would give away free books and all sorts of fun stuff. So it was very active for the whole system.
What was Art like back then?
Much like he was anytime. He was very, very matter of fact, down to earth. Okay, folks, here we go, kind of a deal. So he never got overexcited. It was all very, very factual, and he did get excited sometimes about a particular topic, but he had some really good questions for for each of the guests, and we covered both the ET UFO topics, alternative health, parapsychology. I mean, lots of different topics. It wasn't just UFO stuff.
And wow, that was such a long time ago too, 1993. Yeah. Everybody was so much younger, right?
Of course, yes.
George Knapp, Linda Moulton Howe, and Art is no longer with us. But at that time in 1993, everything started to take off. Right? Yeah. Area 51, Roswell, and all of these subjects, when it came to ET, everything was elevating really, really quickly. And you're working for Bigelow and right in the thick of it.
Right.
Right. And did you have any idea at that time? I can imagine how exciting it was. but to see us in 2023 and have the Senate and Congress and the Department of Defense and the UAP task force and everything that is happening today, did you have any idea, as exciting as it was in 93, but that in 2023 we would be where we are today?
Not really. I always thought about disclosure like the second coming. Everybody talked about it, but nothing ever seemed to happen. And I don't mean disrespect to any religious groups. But you know, I was just in the thick of it and enjoying the work and meeting all these amazing people. We'd get calls, you know, some of them were outlandish. Somebody wanted to open a UFO pizza parlor, and somebody else wanted to open up a UFO theme park. So I would get all the information, pass it over to Mr. Bigelow, and of course it was always his ultimate decision whether he would go with any of these. And there were only one or two projects that he actually went with.
Did he ever talk about going back to Bigelow? Did he ever talk about direct contact? You know, he's done interviews and he said some pretty matter of fact things. You know, specifically 60 Minutes, where he says ET is here. I mean, that this is a matter of fact. Did he ever have those kind of conversations?
He's always had that belief, as far as I knew. Yeah.
But did he ever make contact?
Not that I know. He wanted to make contact because my husband at the time was an engineer technician, and Mr. Bigelow asked David to put together a device, a signaling device that he could take out in the field and start playing and perhaps bring in some UFOs. And this was based on a frequency that had been discovered by Dr. Hal Puthoff and had actually been published. And in the article, the write-up I have of the lab, I've put that in the references. So there was an actual frequency that David was able to put in that device. Plus, Mr. Bigelow felt that just Morse code would be sufficient too, as well, to make contact, which I didn't feel was, you know, as efficient as perhaps this other signal.
What was the frequency? Do you remember?
I don't remember offhand. I would have to go back to my notes.
Okay. You can
I could text you after the show.
Text me, email me that frequency, and I'll tell you why that could be interesting. Later. But I'm very, very interested in that. The other part about this, a couple of weeks ago, back to remote viewing, a couple of weeks ago, it's been over a month now. A government whistleblower came forward. His name is David Grush.
I've read about that. Yeah.
Okay, so you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
He has he said some pretty amazing things. And I keep going back to, and I reference this every night on the show. Two points. He's given us 100 things to discuss, but two basic takeaways. A, we have flying saucers. Our government, we are in possession of them. And two, we have aliens on ice. Right. This is some pretty amazing claims. Is that front loading to you? And is this something that you could look into and remote view where these craft may be and where these bodies may be kept on ice?
Well, I have actually, because back in 2004, 1994, I did some viewing for a group that was in California. And one of the projects they gave me was a little bit front loaded. but only enough because they didn't know what it was they were looking for, you know. And they said, we want where is the Roswell material? So I did a project for them and got a lot of information that it was at a particular air base in a particular shed in a particular number, etc., and wrapped up in sort of sheets, you know. So I have been tasked with things like that.
Where was this air base?
Again, I'd have to go back to my notes. And I've written up several books. One is Remote Perceptions. And then I wrote Seer, and I think it's in Seer that there are quite a few of my books out on Amazon. It's in Seer. I'd have to go back because I don't remember all that. So I have documented practically, I would say 75% of what I was been tasked with over the years.
Okay. So now I'm going to front load the questions then. Maybe this will help jog your memory. Was it in Ohio?
You mean Dayton, Ohio?
Yes.
I think it was, yeah.
It was in Dayton, Ohio.
I think so. Yeah, that may be just suggestion, you know, but I'd have to go back and double check.
Now, you said it was under sheets, but was it an intact craft or was it parts?
No, it was all in bits, and it was like surgical, you know, these green surgical drape sheets. It was all wrapped up in those, in this the big kind of warehouse up on shelves.
Okay, now, so back to my question. With David Grush giving this type of information, is it possible for you to take that and we're talking the number that's floating around right now is 12. We have 12 craft. We have 12 flying saucers. Is it possible for you to find out where those locations are?
I could if I was tasked, possibly. Whether I would be interested enough is another matter.
I'm tasking you. What information would you need from me?
Probably assign a coordinate, an alphanumeric to each of the locations, and just give me the alphanumerics because they would be mixed up, you know, and say, okay, remote view these locations. What do you perceive?
Well, I don't know the locations.
I would write down, you know, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to find out the locations.
Yeah.
So what would the process be? Would you describe the building on the outside, what it looks like, and maybe
whatever I was able to perceive? But you should go now and talk to Ryan Wood and his father Robert Woods. I think it's Woods. They have information from way back. They were sharing information way back about potential locations for downed ET type aircraft. So you don't really need remote viewers. Go to the folks who were talking about it 20 years ago.
Well, what we're all trying to do here, especially the community, but Congress and Washington, D.C., that there are going to be hearings next month on this. And specifically about who's got these craft and where are they. It's come to that point. And there's a lot of chatter in our community about who has got these. Is it private corporations, right? Is it outside of the government, which is an easy thing to do? Are they outside of the United States? Are they not even here? you know what I mean? And that's where we need the help, because right now it's all speculation. The documents that the Woods have, and you're referring to MJ12 and the Majestic documents.
Well,
and,
they've talked about them too verbally to folks. So
right.
yeah,
But
in the past.
I'm more interested in what is the information that Grush has seen, and where are these craft, and I'm just wondering if remote viewing could help with that.
What I could do is to give them out. I have a group of people that I've trained, remote viewers. From time to time, I give them projects. So I could send them out, to a particular group. Okay, remote view this coordinate. What do you perceive? Without giving them any front loading. And we could give those coordinates to different groups of remote viewers.
The other part about this, and I'm wondering what information you may have, is that the conversations that the media is having, Washington, D.C., the Department of Defense, the UAP Task Force, and now it's called Arrow, that these conversations are very public now. It's never been like this before. Do you have an idea why suddenly the conversation is about ET and contact? Is something about to happen? Is there a reason that these conversations are happening?
Well, the first thing is I want to say is I imagine and I perceive them to be very sanitized, all the information that's coming out. You're not going to get the whole information. It's going to be sanitized and restricted because there's stuff they will not want to share. There's also this rumor that it's all going to be part of some red flag alien invasion story that's going to come about, which I don't think so, because they've been coming here visiting for millennia, probably before we were just living in caves. So I don't think it's going to be. We will learn some things, but I don't think we're going to learn everything.
You mean from the government?
From whoever is orchestrating this. Government, private industry. I think it's a mixture of, it's groups that have private industry and government and military components.
Yeah, but why do you think the switch has been flipped, so to speak? Why is the conversation happening now where before you and I were just crazy people, right? And that's the way we were treated. Now all of a sudden, ET and contact and disclosure and flying saucers and little green men is suddenly okay to talk about in public, no matter who you are, a politician or a media personality, the news, the New York Times. Why has this switch suddenly been flipped into the okay mode?
I don't think it's been sudden, because then you got Hal Puthoff and a bunch of folks maybe 5 years ago had a group that they started up for disclosure, and it kind of faded out. It didn't come to anything specific, but from that point, this gradual disclosure of information has come about. Now, my co-author, Scott Jones of Voices from the Cosmos, he always said the disclosure has already happened in certain circles. It just needs to get out to the public.
Well,
so it's possible that this is common knowledge to certain groups already. The disclosure has happened, but not to everybody.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
It seems it seems to me that it is no longer in the government's control, and they know that. I just don't know why.
Yeah, I don't run in those circles. because as I say, I don't have any security clearances. I don't, I'm very much, even though I'm part of the remote viewing organization, and I teach and write and do a lot of stuff in the RV field, I'm not privy to much of the insider information.
Yeah. It's not exactly what I was referring to.
No,
but
I'm not quite sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, but my question is why? Do you feel that, again, this is an opinion, but that the government, in assistance with the media, is trying to get out in front of this subject, right? And so we don't freak out, and that's why there has to be a reason why suddenly everything is okay to talk about. So the world isn't, caught by surprise when whatever happens. And I'm not suggesting that, a giant mothership is going to fly over Los Angeles. That's possible. Or is it that there's documents out there floating around and they know about that and they're about to
Well, other
surface?
countries have had disclosure, but it doesn't usually reach the American public. France, Spain, Russia, China, they've all had levels of disclosure, but it doesn't always reach here or reach the public.
Right. I wanted to ask you about this, and I saw this come up in the chat about an hour ago. What about law enforcement? We see all these TV shows, CSI, and I love these murder mystery documentaries and things like that. Does law enforcement reach out to remote viewers for assistance?
Oh, absolutely. One of my colleagues, Pam Coronado, she was called the psychic detective for many years. She had her own radio TV show where she was taken out to locations, blind tasked. So she was taken out by police departments to locations, say, of a crime or a murder, and she was asked to walk around. She would be a wonderful person for you to have on the show, by the way. She would then pick up on information. She'd say, okay, let's go down this alley here. And then there would be, she'd say, okay, this is where it happened. Or she would give a description. She would meet with a police artist and describe what she perceived as the killer. And when the case was actually solved, so much of her information was correct. And in fact, she has a case of police badges from all the police departments that she's worked with and had success working with. So yes, that has been done. People,
have you ever participated in a murder investigation yourself?
Yes, yeah. This was back again around, how many years ago now? 2012, 2013. And a colleague came to me and said, I'm going to give you a coordinate. I want you to do a viewing for me, which I do for colleagues from time to time. So what I found was this stagnant water, brackish water, there was kelp, there was a land nearby, there was an estuary, and there was a murder. Somebody had died. So I gave that information to my colleague, and this was actually Robert Knight, the famous rock star photographer.
Oh, he's an old friend of mine.
Okay.
Wait a minute. You know Robert Knight?
I know Robert Knight, of course. Yes, and Marianne.
Oh man!
And now in New Zealand.
I've known him since mid '80s, somewhere in there. He's taken my picture. Yeah.
Yeah, he's another good guy you should have on the show.
Oh, I've talked to him many times about coming on the show. He's like,
Yeah, I know.
him and
Anyway,
Ingo go way back,
yes, yeah.
way back, way back. Okay.
So anyway, we found out that I gave him that information. He went, no, no, no. My friend isn't. This is about my friend. He's been missing for a month. We want to find him. And I said, well, this is what I've perceived. And I don't go by, I trust what I perceive. And he said, no, no, it's not in the water. He's not dead. He's somewhere, but we don't know where yet. So it turned out that this was the DJ murder case out in California. And he had been murdered. He'd been shot, put overboard. And eventually it came to the knowledge of the LA Sheriff's Office, who knew about remote viewing. They'd had Dr. John Alexander out there at some point, who gave them a talk about remote viewing. So they knew to take this seriously. There's a whole backstory to this, which take a couple of shows to go into. So they knew, and when we did when I did a show recently, it's a while back now, for the History Channel, one of the detectives actually was interviewed and said, yeah, the remote viewers found where the body was. They found where the body had gone over, and etc. A lot of information. So, and I got some of my colleagues on that case as well, and it's been written up. And so, yeah, I have worked with police departments.
What's that like emotionally for you to be dealing with a subject like that? Somebody that has been killed a violent death and a discarded body like that. How do you deal with that emotionally?
Well, I trained in my 20s. I trained as a nurse and social worker. So I've worked in operating rooms as a nurse. I've worked in emergency departments as a nurse. I've seen a lot of blood and gore, so that doesn't bother me at all. I'm able to look at that and say, okay, what I'm just seeing here is a dead body. Particularly if it's bloated. I know it's been in water if it's bloated. And I know that sounds crude, but that's my subconscious giving me information.
Yeah. That's tough for me to deal with.
It is for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough for me to deal with. I did. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but there's a method. It's called the Estes method, and the Estes method is you block the world out. So you're wearing headphones that's playing white noise. You're wearing a blindfold. You are completely cut off of the senses, right? Mm-hmm. And then somebody is asking that person questions. Now, you can't hear the questions, but you blurt out answers, but you can't hear the questions, and it's called the Estes method. So I've done these sessions. I've done them on TV, and one of these sessions went completely sideways and started into a kidnapping, a victim, a murder, the trunk of a car, the thing. Okay. And I had to stop. I didn't want to hear anymore. I didn't want to. And this person that is going through the site, they don't know. It's just like remote viewing. You don't know what you're going to encounter. But I had to stop the session. I didn't want to hear anymore.
Yeah. It's not for everybody. Not everybody can remote view those kinds of projects or cases.
Yeah. The when Robert and I, going back to Robert Knight, and the solving of he was involved with a few different things, and with Ingo too as well.
Yeah.
And I told Robert, and it was weird um how do I say this? I was like, wait a minute, Robert, this is Jimmy you're talking to. And I had no idea. I didn't know about that side of his life. And I've
Yeah.
known the guy for 35 years. And I did not know about his interest in this, his friendship with Ingo, of course.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about any of that, and I found out about it quite by accident. And he was just a rock and roll friend of mine, and I had no idea. Angela, it was a strange experience for me to go through.
I can imagine. Yeah.
I mean, he's photographed everybody.
Oh, the rock stars. He's way back with Mick Jagger and
everybody.
he's photographed everybody. He's a famous rock and roll photographer. Yeah.
And it was just so funny where now I'm talking to him about Ingo Swann and solving murder cases, in Las Vegas and LA, and I had no idea. I really didn't. It was just a mind-blowing thing for me to go through. Everybody can look up Robert Knight. You can go and Google him right now and see who we're talking about. This is
a photographer to the rock stars.
At that level of photography,
amazing.
There's only a couple of people on this planet, and he's one of them. And then you have this crazy connection with remote viewing and Ingo Swann.
Yes.
Yeah, so totally strange. How did you meet Robert?
I met him at the one of the remote viewing conferences, and made friends with Marianne. And actually, Marianne did one of my courses. Marianne's his wife, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gave me the project to go look for his friend, which was blind at first, blind tasking. And then, had us remote view the perpetrator and where they were and the locations, etc. And I got a whole bunch of people in, other remote viewers, working on that. And so that's all been written up, and also gave talks at the remote viewing conferences on this. And so that's how I came to know Robert.
It's unbelievable. What a small world. I mean,
now
is it to the point though, with not only with law enforcement, but when we look at the CIA, for instance, and officially, I'm going to put that in air quotes, shutting down Project Stargate. Do you think that is the case, or that remote viewing and Stargate are still there, but under another name?
My personal belief is that it continued, because I've heard on the grapevine little snippets here and there, not just with the Army, but with Air Force and other military groups too. So I think it's still continuing.
What are the reasons? I mean, we have the data collection, of course, but what are the other reasons to have a remote viewing program? It's got to be cheaper, right? You're not putting people out in the field. You're not putting people's lives in danger, right? There's yeah. Go ahead.
Well, you can put someone's psyche into a reactor that's just burst, conflagrated or whatever, and get information. You can put them deep down in the their psyche, the bottom of the ocean. You can put them out into space. It's cheaper and more effective than sending people. You can send psyche, the person's psyche.
Is there, if I was going to do something like a Freedom of Information Act, right, and look for documents and things about remote viewing, would the CIA or the NRO and the other agencies that would probably be involved with this, what would I search for? What remote viewing wouldn't be, or would those be the search terms?
If you go to IRVA, the International Remote Viewing Association, irva.org, there is a huge library there of CIA documents from the Stargate days of projects, and I'm sure other stuff as well. So that would be a good place to start. And, it'll take you off on way down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, because I think that when they shut down officially, again, air quotes, Project Stargate, and the minute stare at goats and that
all
part,
that stuff.
right? That was their way of pulling the public away from it. That the project, their use of it, it's too good, right? It's too, it's you know what I mean? There's no way that they would.
It's too useful to be just abandoned. Yeah.
It's such a great tool.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's still around because we have the International Remote Viewing Association that covers a lot of different schools, a lot of different projects. We're having our conference in August in Charlottesville, Virginia, in conjunction with the Monroe Institute, which you can find on IRVA. And there's going to be a lot of very, very good speakers there, very scientific, very practical speakers on many different topics. I'm going to talk about out-of-body experiences and remote viewing.
Where can everybody reach out to you? Where can everybody reach out to you? What's the easiest way to?
For me, they can either go to my website, which is, mindwiseconsulting.com, or email me at mindwiseconsulting@gmail.com.
And all of your books are on Amazon.
Yeah. Some of them are
out
of print. Yeah, but you'll find them all under Angela Thompson Smith, author. You'll find my books.
Fantastic show tonight, Angela. Thank you so much.
Good.
We've got the links up for Angela, and you can go over to our website. And, of course, throughout social media, we've got everything up right there. Angela, have a great night. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on the show.
I look forward to our next conversation with Angela. Thank you so much. That was a perfect show for me tonight. And I think that we all remote view. I do. And there's something about when I talk about deja vu or just things. I think that we all have it inside of us. Thank you so much, Angela. It was just a great conversation. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you to Dennis and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldridge. Intro, Space Boys, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR over the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2023 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, right here on Fade to Black, the voice, Robert Clotworthy. That's right. Ancient Aliens, Oak Island, Secretive Skinwalker, Robert Clotworthy, right here on Fade to Black tomorrow night. Until then, I want everybody to be safe. Go Beckley Tappy.
Bye.